Okay guys, so in this video we'll be doing a quick tutorial on React hook form, that is how to handle forms in React using the React hook form library. In this video I would be showing you two approaches to use the React hook form. One is to use the plain vanilla React hook form library, and the other one would be to use it with a validator, something like ZOD. So that's also what we are going to do in the second part of the video. So for this tutorial, what I've done is that I've created this project on GitHub, that is React hook form tutorial. And if you want to follow along with me, you can simply clone the starter project, or you can simply switch to the branch called starter project. Because after this video, I will be putting in two more branches. That is the main branch that contains all the source code of the completed application. So you can simply go here and you can simply click here, that is code, and then you can simply clone this repo and you can switch to the starter project. So without wasting any time, let's see that what do we have in this project. So if we open this project inside VS Code, we see that we have a couple of dependencies here. And I'm simply using Tailwind here just to make the form look much better. And the only dependency we have here apart from React is the React hook form, which is required for building forms with React hook form. And now if we go to the app.jsx file, we see that we have a very basic form here. We have this very basic form element here, HTML element here. And then we have a couple of divs in here, and then we have a submit button here, as you can see on the right side. And if you open this div, that is the first input field, we see that we have an input with type of text, name is first name, and then the placeholder is first name. And then we are simply spitting out the paragraph tags, which says that first name is required, and this red color is coming because of this Tailwind class. So until now, I have not done anything regarding React hook form. So let's say that how do we dynamically show these messages, that is this field is required, that this last name is required, and this email should be a valid email address. So let's see that how do we do all that using the React hook form. So the first thing we need to do, we need to import useForm from React hook form. So we can say from React hook form, and what do we need to import? We need to import useForm, simply like this, because as the name suggests, it works with hooks. So we can simply say const something equal to useForm, and this takes in a couple of options. So firstly, though it is not required, but I always advise you to pass in the default values for all the fields that you want to validate with this hook form. So let's say we have in the here three fields, that is first name, last name, email. And in the same way, we have the names for these fields, that is name, first name, and the second input field has a name of last name, and the third input field has a name of email here. So for now, let me simply comment out this email thing because I would be coming to this later on. And now we have this thing here, that is this thing, and I need to keep my application running. So let me do npm run dev. And now we see that we only have these two fields, first name and last name, and we want to validate the form before submission. So what do we need to pass in here? The first option that we can pass in here, though it is not necessary, I would pass in here default values, because it provides us with better auto completion for our form fields later on, which we'll see in a moment. And the default values for first name would be an empty string, and the default value for the last name would be an empty string, like so. And now this hook form returns us with an object, and we are simply destructuring the object with the following fields. That is, we have a form state here, then we have a register here, function here, then we have the handle submit function here, and we have a couple of more things, that is setValue and getValues, which I will be coming to that later on. And now in this form state, we want to simply extract out the error object or the errors object which we have. That is, when we are validating the form, that is, we want this first name to be required, and the minimum length of the first name should be greater than 3 characters. So in case if that is not fulfilled by our input component, then we would be simply spitting out the error message here, and that is what is contained inside this errors object here, that we are destructuring from the form state. So let's save this. So we have better formatting here. And now what we need to do, we need to go to each of the input fields, and we need to register the values for these names here. So what I need to do, I need to go to my input field, and here I can simply say, I want to spread out the register function like this. And here we need to pass in the name of the field. And in our case, the name of the field is first name. So as we see here that we get auto completion, and it is because we have provided in here the default values. Had we not provided in the default values here, then we would not be getting this auto completion here. So now we provide in the first name here. So now we have registered the first field called first name, but as at the same time we see that we are getting a red squiggly line here that says that name equal to first name. And this is because when we spread out this register function here with the first name, it already contains the name attribute here that contains the name equal to first name. So therefore it is giving me an error, or it is like simply screaming at me that we have provided in two attributes to this input field. So what I need to do, I need to simply comment it out. I need to simply remove it out from here because that name equal to first names comes from this register thing here. And now what more we can do, we can pass in some options to this thing here, that is to this register function, and that would be like the validation function. So we want this field to be required, so we can simply say required to be true like this. And in the same way, we want to register our last name field also. So we can say register, and in the same way, we simply need to remove this. We want to provide in the name field here. So we simply provide in the last name here, and then we can simply remove this name from here. So if we save this, and then what do we want to do? We want to get rid of these first name is required and last name is required because we want to conditionally show them. So what we can do, we can take this errors object here, that is this errors objects that is destructured from the form state, which is destructured from the return value from this useForm hook. So now what we can do, we can use this error object here inside this inside this paragraph, or like before this paragraph, so that we can conditionally show that. So we can say errors dot first name. If there are errors in the first name, then only we want to render out this paragraph tag. And instead of providing in our own message here, what we can do, we can simply spit out errors dot first name dot message like this, because this first name dot message contains the actual error message. And in the same way, what we can do, we can again copy this, and instead of spitting out last name is required, we can conditionally spit out last name is required depending on whether there is an error in the last name field, and then only we want to display out the message. So that's all what you need to do to make your hook form working. So if I save this application, we see that our errors are gone and we have simply placeholder values. So let's say if we simply click on submit here, so we see that we are still reloading the page because we have not utilized this handle submit function here, because currently the form is submitting to the same route. So what we need to do here inside the form, we need to say on submit, that is on submit, we need to do something. And here we can simply pass in this handle submit function here. So handle submit, and this takes in data, or let's call it values. And here what I need to do, I'll simply do an alert here that simply spits out the values here. So let me do it like this. So JSON dot stringify values comma null comma 2, simply like this. And now if I click on submit, we won't be submitting it to the same page, but instead we would be simply getting the values here inside the handle submit function here, which is called from the onSubmit event of the form. So if I click on submit here, we see that we are getting some errors here, but we are not able to see those errors here because we see that something is missing inside the message here. That is this message here. So instead, so what we can do, if we simply open the log statement here and we simply log out the errors object here. So console.log errors like this, and we reload the form, we see that currently our error object is an empty string, empty object. But as soon as we click on submit, we see that we get an error object here. That is this error object, and we see that the type is required, and we see we have an empty message here. So if you like simply, if you're simply like doing that this field is required, you can simply, instead of spitting out errors dot first name dot message, you can simply like do it like this. That is first name is required. First name is required like this. And if you save this, we see that we get this error message here. So currently we do not have any error message, but as soon as we click on submit, we see that we get this error message that is first name is required. So a better approach to do this would be like, instead of simply printing out a static error message, would be to like conditionally show the error messages depending on what kind of error it is. So currently we only have this validation here that is required to be true, but there might be a case that you want this first name to be of minimum length. So let's say we provide here min length would be, let's say, 4. And if we save this form, and if we still reload the page, and if we submit here, we see that we are still getting the message here that is first name is required. So a better approach would be to like pass in the messages here as well. So to do that, what we need to do, so after the required statement, instead of passing in true here, what we need to do, we need to say value would be true, and then the message would be this thing here, that is first name is required. So let me go here and let me paste it here like this. And for the same, in the same way, for the minimum length, we can simply say value to be, let's say, 4, and the message would be first must be 4 chars in length like this. And now we can simply uncomment this errors.firstname.message because this error object would contain the message here because of this message here. So if I save this and if we open this thing here, we see that we may need to like reload the form. And now if I open the thing here and we see that currently we do not have an error. And if we simply click on submit here, we see that we get this message here that is first name is required. And if we open this thing here, we see that we are getting this message here that is first name is required, which is directly coming from this message object or from this message property here. So let's say we fill in 2 letters here, that is TR. And as soon as we filled in TR, we see that we are getting this message here that is must be 4 characters in length, because this field is still not valid because it needs to be of minimum of 4 characters. So let me provide in 5 and we see that this error is gone. For the last name, if I simply provide in Mithil, if I click my console and I simply do submit, we see that we get an alert here that says first name is truly, last name is Mithil, and that's my name. So we see that our form handling is working, and whatever you want to do, you can do with these values here. So for now, what I'll do, I'll simply copy these 2 fields that is required in minimum length, and I'll put it here inside this thing here that is in the last name also, like this. So instead of first, it should say last. If I save this, we are getting this thing here working. So just ignore these form values as of now. So if I save this and if I reload the page and if I submit, we see that first name is required, last name is required. And if I reload the page and if I touch this field that is first name, and if I blur out from this field and go to the last name, we see that we are not getting the error message when we simply blur out from the field. So to do that, or to make that happen, what you need to do, you need to pass in one more option to this useForm hook, and that is mode. And I suggest you that you can go to the properties that you can pass inside that useForm thing. But for now, let me simply go to this thing here and useForm here. And you can simply go to this thing here and you can pass in this. You can check about more about the mode property. But in my opinion, you should be good to go if you simply provide the mode to be all like this. And it simply means that when the validation should occur. So let me go back and here I'll simply provide in all here. So if I save this, if I reload the page, I touch this field first name, and as soon as I blur out from this field and I touch the last name field, we should be getting the error message here that is first name is required, as we can see here. And if I again go back to the first name, we see that last name is required. And again, our form error handling is working like this and like so. Now, one more thing, that is by default, they have some like very basic validation. So we can also pass in max length here like this. And here, let me say max value would be 10 and message would be too long. Let's save it. And if I reload the page, let me provide in this thing here. And as soon as I go beyond 10 characters, we see that we are getting this message that is too long. And we won't be able to submit the form until and unless the form fields are validated. So now let's say you want to validate an email address. So let's uncomment out this thing here. Let's save this. And what I'll do for the first name and last name, I'll simply provide in some default value so that I can focus on this thing that is email. And as soon as I save this and I reload the page, we see that the default values, that is first name and last name, that is truly, and Mithil automatically gets populated inside the respective input fields, as we can see here. So that is the use case of default values if you want to provide some default values to your fields. And again, we need to have one more field here, that is email, and that would be an empty string as of now. And this email should be like registered here. So let me simply do register, and here we need to simply do email. And for the validation of this input field, what I'll be doing, instead of doing this required and min length and like doing all the gymnastics ourselves, I would be simply using a regular expression. And just don't worry, because like later on in the video, like in 5 minutes, we would be using a library called ZOD to do automatic form validations. So we can go to this thing here and we can simply search for email regex. So email regex, I can go to this link, whatever link or whatever regex regular expression you can find out for to validate email. And I'm simply going to copy this regex from here. And now let me go back to my email, to my this thing, and here we can pass in some options here. And here, instead of required or min length, I would simply provide in pattern here. And in the same way, the value of the pattern would be like this regex here. And we do need to escape these with these thing here. And then we need to provide in the message here, that is email should be a valid email, should be a valid email, like this. And now we need to conditionally display the error. So again, we can do the same thing. Errors.email. If there are errors in the email, then we spit out this error message, and we can simply say, or we can simply throw out the error, that is errors.email.message, like this. So if we save this, we see that we have this thing here, but the email field is not populated because it's an empty string initially. And now what I can do, I can simply pass in an email. So let me say tru, and we get this error, that is email should be a valid email. So if I do truly at gmail.com, we see the error is gone. And if I submit, we see that our email is a valid email. And as soon as I like change it to something that is not a valid email, or if I do something like trulyhash@gmail.com, we see that we are not, this field is not validated by this regex pattern. So if you simply want to copy this regex, you can simply copy this regex from the repository. Otherwise, you like pass in any regex or like pass in anything or any type of field validation you want using the pattern thing here. Like this is the thing you want to go with if you're not using a library called ZOD or something like that. So this is all about this thing here. So now let's see that how do we handle like this form validation using the ZOD library. So for that, what I need to do, I need to like install one more dependency, and that is called @hook form resolvers. So for that, what I'll do, I'll simply stop the application. So to install the library, you need to install this library called @hook form resolver. So let me copy it from here, or let me simply copy this thing from here, and we can go back. And here what we need to do, we need to simply paste it here, and we need to install this library. And again, I'm using ZOD here, but still you can use any like validation library like Joey or Yep for this hook form, but like ZOD is the thing of the day. So we are focusing on ZOD as of now. So what we need to do, we need to simply import a resolver function from this hook form resolvers. So let me go back here and let me start the application, and let me do npm run dev. The application is started, and here what we need to do, we need to import something from hook form resolvers /ZOD. As you can see that you have a couple of more things here, that is Joey. As I told you, we have, I don't know much about other thing, but we have Yup here, but we are focusing on ZOD here. So we can simply say ZOD resolver like this. And in the similar way, the first thing we need to do, we need to define our schema for ZOD. So to use ZOD in your application, you also need to install ZOD as a dependency inside your application. So what we need to do, we need to say npm ZOD like this, and it would take a couple of seconds. So let me do npm run dev. Let me minimize the terminal. And here what we can do, we need to do import something from ZOD, not zlib, but ZOD. And here we need to import z from ZOD. Oops. So yep. So we need to define a schema for this first name, last name, and email. So you can define the schema anywhere inside your application. So I'm simply defining it outside this app functional component. So we can say const form schema equal to z dot object, and here we need to provide in the things that we need to have validation on. So we need to provide in first name, and it should be a z dot string dot min, and here we need to provide in the minimum length. So let's say 4. If you want to provide in the message, custom message, that is in 4 chars like this, and we can also provide in max here. So we can simply say max should be 8 chars. So we can simply say max 8 chars like this. And in the similar way, we can simply define the schema for the last name. We can simply say last name, or the validation rule for the last name. So we have the similar validation rule. And for the email, it should be like much easier. So z dot email, or it should be z dot string dot email dot required, or it should be an email like this. So if we save this, we have no changes here, but what we can do, we can pass in our own resolver here inside the useForm hook. So what we can do after the mode, we can say resolver should be this thing here, that is the ZOD resolver, which is like removed from here. So we can simply say import ZOD resolver, or we can say from took from resolvers ZOD, and this should be a ZOD resolver. And here we can copy this ZOD resolver from here. We can pass in the ZOD resolver, and here inside this we can simply pass in the form schema that we defined above, that is this form schema. And now what we can do, we can simply get rid of all these validation rules that we have applied to our register function. So we can simply get rid of this thing from here. In the same way, we can get rid of this thing from here, from the last name also. We are simply registering the values as first name, as last name. And in the same way, we can get rid of this pattern validation from this email thing from here. So if I save this, and if everything I've done is right, then we should be getting like, let me also remove this default values. So if I save this, and if I've done everything right, we should be having a working form here. So let me reload the page. We see that we have a first name. We touch it, we blur out. We should say, see that we have this min 4 characters that comes from this ZOD schema. And let me put in those 4 characters. And if I go beyond 8, we get again an error. For the last name, we blur out, we get the error. So we say metal. And if we go more, we get an error. And currently we have an invalid email. So let me provide in an email here. So truly, and it's still an invalid email. And you see that it is like a default message coming from ZOD that says that invalid email, but we can provide our own custom message as well. So let's say we say gmail.com, and as soon as I write .com, we see that all the errors are gone, and I simply submit here. We see that we get this message here, that is first name, last name, email inside this alert box. So now let's come to this thing here, that is this, what is this form values here? So before getting the form values, we can get the form values using one more property that is exported from this useForm hook, and that is getValues. So we can simply say getValues like this, and here we can simply use the getValues thing from here, and here we can simply pass that thing here, that is getValues inside this JSON.stringify, which is like rendering out this piece of code. So if I save this, we see that we have the default values here. And if I pass in my thing here, and if I submit here, we see that we have these form values here. And if you want to see the values as soon as they are typed inside the fields, what you can do, instead of get values, you can again use this watch function from here. So you can simply use watch, and you can put in watch here, and it would like make your renders again and again. So as soon as I type, we see that we are getting auto completion inside the form values here. That simply gets you the current form state. So we can see that we are getting the current form state like this. But this state does not mean that the values are 100% valid, because we see that we are getting these form values, but the values are still not valid because we have an invalid email. So to get the values, the best thing would be to use the form values, and this watch function should be like only used if you want to watch the values as soon as they are typed inside the input fields. So now let me show you one more thing, and that is set value. That is set value like this. So let's say somehow you want to set a value of a particular field from outside the form. So let's say we have this form set value function here from this exported from this use form. So what we can do, we can use the set value function from some button. So let me simply copy this button from here and let me put it outside this form here like this. And let me simply give it a color of red, and this should be like red like this. And let me also give it red, and this should be like a set value of form of first name. So first name like this. So we have this button here, but currently it does nothing. So what we can do, we can like minimize this thing. And here what we can do, we can have an on-click event handler on this button. So on click, we want to do something, and that something would be to use the set value function and set the value of the first name or any field you want to like have here. First name would be like, let's say mafia like this. So if I save this and if I reload the page and if I click on this button here, that simply sets the value on this first name field. Watch what happens. So if I set the value of first name, we see that we have this field populated from the set value function here. So this is again something if you want to use, if you're using some kind of Google Maps, and if you want to like get the latitude and longitude of a particular position, and then you want to pre-fill the form with that thing by Google Map event handler. So then you can use the set value thing here. And I guess that I've covered each and everything about this React hook form, like using the plain validations and using with ZOD validation using the ZOD library. So that's all about this video. And if you have liked the video, do hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, do subscribe to the channel, because I guess that if you have made it so far, I guess that you like the video. Please help by liking the video and subscribing to the channel, and press the bell icon for notifications about the channel uploads. So thank you. Bye, tata, take care, and have a good day and have a great day.